We are live. We are live. It is Monday. This is time for Build for Bottom Line. This is Matthew Struck. As always, my partner in crime is Alan White. This is a production of Treadstone Risk Management. Before we get rolling, we have an awesome guest for you this evening. Before we get rolling, a little bit of business. If you are watching this live or you end up watching this on record later, just give us a like, share it. Shoot us your comments. We can monitor those real time, and if you have questions, that we can definitely respond to those. And make sure to hit the notification bell so that when we do go live, you get notification of it. So this evening, we are joined by the one, the only Ron Soussa from Liberty Office Suites. How's it going, Ron?
What a build-up. Going great, Matt. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so full disclosure, Ron is technically our landlord. We are in a Liberty Office Suites, actually the same building together, broadcasting right now. But so yeah, Ron operates, and I'll give everyone, or I'll give you a chance to give everyone a little bit of background. What is Liberty Office Suites, and kind of what do you do?
Sure. Well, at heart, Liberty Office Suites is a business community. We like to say we're networking when you're not working. So you and I got to know one another just because we work together. We see each other in the hallway, tap each other when we're making coffee, and that little bit of I think the word is propinquity, which means the people you get to know by virtue of being close, like your neighbors. You get to know, you get to find out what they're about, what they like, what their families are like. And when you have the opportunity to refer business to somebody, you're going to think of the person that you see every day. You're a nice person. You don't steal my sandwich out of the refrigerator. We have things in common. We talk, people here in the building that I play tennis with or go bike riding with. You develop a friendship.
Yeah.
And so at its core, we are a business community of friends. But at its most elemental, we rent furnished offices. So we say it's the step that you take when you move out of your spare bedroom. You're ready for a real office or tenant. We have larger companies. The trend in industry, particularly now what we're seeing with the virus, is that office space is trending downward. Many people are finding it easy to work from home. So conventional office space may not be looking good over the near term, but for those who cannot work from home but still want a place to go and have a professional environment where they might feel, we all have private offices. So our office is our own domain, just the same as homes are. If you want a place to go where your kids aren't bothering you, or you have reliable internet, and you can actually feel like a professional and go out to work without actually going to the office, a place like ours, Liberty Office Suites, may be what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You also offer, this might be foreign to some people, but you also offer like a virtual office type setup as well, right? Like, could you just explain that?
Sure. Yeah. So a virtual office is for people who actually are comfortable working out of their homes. They just, they like that commute, down the steps and into the spare bedroom or the den. But they don't want their home address listed on their business card. We always say that, right. Other people, they're going to Google you and they'll find out where you live. And if your home is either more expensive or less expensive than theirs, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So, you could use our address. You put our address, either one, or Parsippany or our location is the address on your business card. To the world, that appears to be your address. And if you use it for Googling purposes, it's a recognized address that Google will know is a business location. And nobody needs to know that you're actually still working from your home. You receive your mail. We let you know when you get a piece of mail. Something that looks important, we'll let you know. People come to see you at your office, and you use one of our conference rooms. So our hostess or receptionists We'll greet your client by name because we know that they're coming. You told us that you have an appointment. We've reserved the conference room for you. We greet them. We bring them a cup of coffee or a drink, and they go into a conference room. You meet them there, and it all appears as if it's your own office. Could even be your entire building for all they know. And that's a virtual office.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Allyn, I think in your former life, you probably experienced this too. Like, I can probably count on one hand the number of times my clients have actually wanted to come into the office.
Yeah.
I mean, like, working in the construction sales space, you're mostly remotely doing work, right, Allyn?
No, you get a lot of clients that come in to drop off, signed contracts, checks, things like that.
Yeah.
They don't trust mailing a check or giving it to you when you pick it up.
Okay.
So I mean, we did have some, not many. I mean, it was, if there was somebody coming in, I knew it was always the same one or two people coming in just to usually talk about, really not so much talk about the project, but talk about the Jets. Surprisingly, a lot of Jets fans used to come to the office to talk to me.
I forget. Do you have that in common, Ron? Are you a long-suffering Jets fan as well?
I am not. I grew up as a Raider fan, and so we had some great years in the 70s and 80s, but not so good more recently.
That's like War and Peace. It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times.
Yeah, I mean, I was really running more of a therapy session most seasons.
Yeah. No, but to that point, I think a lot of businesses nowadays are beginning to reassess that just the construct of what is an office, right? Like, what is the commercial space that you operate every single day, where you're kind of doing business or you're operating out of. And I think that's morphing. Ron, what really kind of like inspired you to? You have two locations, right? You have Montville and you have Parsippany. What kind of inspired you to get into that kind of like shared office space or on-demand office space industry?
Well, I saw a demand for it. My background is as a commercial real estate broker, and I've been representing clients and tenants and landlords for a real long time. And I've seen how well it works for businesses to get established in an area where they may be able to develop some business. I actually started my background in it began when I was representing a complex of office buildings in Roxbury and Mount Arlington, which were relatively close to Picatinny Arsenal, which was gearing up for some munitions and programs that eventually got highly funded during the Reagan administration. It goes back that far to the 80s. This is strategic, the Star Wars. So we had a whole host of defense contractors that were looking to do business with the government, with Picatinny, but they had relatively short-term contracts. And they didn't want to sign conventional 5-year leases and to make a commitment unless they knew they had the business for at least that length of time.
Yeah.
So we took one of the buildings that I represented. I recommended to the landlord that we fit out 10,000 square feet of office space. We put 40 private offices in and a couple of conference rooms. And little by little, we started. We rented all of the offices. But more importantly, from the landlord's perspective, he was able to rent his other office buildings because as these companies were able to get their contracts, they were there on site with a short-term office with us in this shared space. But some of them got contracts for lengthy periods of time, and then they signed conventional leases. So from the landlord's perspective, it was a win-win. He finished out and got very good rent for 10,000 square feet of space, but then went on and rented several other buildings with really good, solid companies. So that was my background. And when I got branched out into becoming a real estate developer myself, and I built some buildings, I recognized that need would be something that I might be able to fill as well.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's like I think what's great is you had some personal experience in the industry. I think some people have gotten into this not necessarily kind of cutting their teeth that way, right? Like I think they've either been sitting on commercial real estate or they had commercial real estate, experience in the past, but not necessarily in terms of kind of like this on demand or like shared office space environment. I think that's fantastic. I think that kind of gives you a unique insight. And I love the fact that, just speaking as a personal client, I love the fact that there's a community that exists here, right? Like, I think that's the highest evolution of these types of spaces. It's not necessarily just kind of a, hotel for businesses. It's literally, you have a number of different businesses in the building that can share business themselves, right? Like they can build mutually. And I love that dynamic. You also have a unique value proposition. The office here in Montville has an on-demand childcare center, right?
That's right. Yeah, the adjacent building, or really adjacent, just 20 feet away, separated by a small courtyard, is a preschool. So we do have some clients who have had their children right next door. So that is something that is nice, and we like being able to look out the window and see the kids being either wheeled around in their strollers or walking on a nice day. And unfortunately, this year we didn't get to have the Halloween parade come through the building.
Oh yeah, yep.
But it's a fun thing having that there. But you mentioned it's not a business hotel. We look at it in terms of like the way a good hotel operator views their business. We're not in the real estate business as much as we are in the hospitality business. Yeah,
maybe I should have said motel.
Yeah. We have to please our clients every day. Most people are on relatively short-term commitments, and if we don't satisfy their needs and find a way to make them happy, they're going to go somewhere else, or not renew. So our job is to try to anticipate needs or respond to criticisms and provide a good environment. It requires a real change of mindset from being a real estate developer to be operating something like this, because our clients are not tenants; they're clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm that's a huge distinction, right? Like they're not just a cash flow, right? Because at the same time, so like it's kind of a misnomer to call it like maybe on demand or shared office space. I don't even know what nomenclature, I forget what you use it in your branding, but it's almost like a misnomer to use that phraseology, right? Because it's really a bunch of individuals. A lot of the folks here are attorneys, real estate attorneys or accountants. There's some retail folks that are in here that kind of operate these virtual retail outlets and stuff like that. We're insurance brokers and risk managers. There's like a nice cross section, and they're coming to you to do their business, right? So you're essentially their kind of home away from home almost, in terms of the way that they're utilizing your space. And I unfortunately, we can't do like a virtual walkthrough. I think there is a virtual tour maybe on your website or might be available in the future. But there's a ton of space here that isn't just offices, right? Like you just walk through it. Like you have like there's like a conference room, like a formal boardroom. But in addition to that, what else is there available as far as the facilities go?
Well, in each of our locations, the Parsippany and Montville locations, we have training rooms. So we have larger spaces where people can hold a training for a group of people. We have a lunch and learn. Each one of the rooms has a pantry and kitchen in it, so you can bring in catered food and have an event. With either for your employees or invite guests. We've had a number of sales companies that have found that our training rooms are very valuable to their businesses.
Yeah, and seminars too, right? Like I think there are seminars that are also possible in those spaces. The other dynamic here is that a lot of
There we
folks
go.
might. Oh, I think we got a little hold up there in the internet connection. But yeah, I was just saying, like seminars are a big deal, right? Like investment advisors, big time, still in person seminars, even with kind of like how virtual the business world has gotten. In person seminars are still in the future, at least, are still going to be a draw. There's still going to be things that kind of help sell for certain professions, and like you said, trainings. If you have a workforce that is now predominantly work from home, you're still going to need potentially a collection place to come in and train or come in and network and things like that. So I think that's fantastic about your space. You're offering kind of like the best of both worlds without having to buy your own building and build it out or outfit it, or negotiate a really complex commercial lease, for some of these spaces and how complex that dynamic gets. What's your sense of it, Allyn? I mean, I know you haven't really been in a co-working or a shared office space before, right? What was your sense of it coming in here?
Well, I mean, I get really the change in the fact that at any given time you'll see anybody from any walk of life or business. There's no guarantee. It's not like walking into a construction office and every day you see the architect, you see the engineer, you see the crews and the owner. It's there's any number of people that you'll meet in any given day there. But I mean, I kind of, you're starting to hear a lot of the reports coming out of all these big corporations, that got shut down with COVID, and they're starting to say things along the lines of, we realize that we can keep our employees home, cut costs on our real estate, and we're still making just as much money with the added savings of not having to pay for these elaborate corporate offices. And
Right.
But you still have your corporate lawyers and things like that who maybe they've got to do a deal in the morning, and they don't want to have some guy sitting at their coffee table with the dog barking at their feet and the kids running around squirting each other with milk.
Yeah, that sounds really good on a recorded deposition, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
How about that, Ron? Like, have you kind of looked at? Obviously, you're a believer, right? I mean, but how have you taken that with some of the news that's come out in terms of some of these larger? I mean, even within the insurance industry, I think we had State Farm, Nationwide, a couple of the large insurance companies basically say that now the number that got kicked around was like 40% of the staff, but it wasn't truly 40%. It was like 40% of half. So maybe let's call it 20% of the staff that are like these back office people. They're sending home to work from home for pretty much indefinitely. And, they aren't alone in being the only industry that's saying that. Have you kind of been paying attention to that? Is that something that's kind of working in your favor, you think?
Yeah, it does work to our favor. I don't like to say it because there's so much pain out there among so many small business owners and other business people. There's nothing good about this COVID, this lockdown that we've been in for way too long. But it has been good for our business. We've had a number of people come to us because they just can't work from home. They need a place where they can focus, where they have reliable internet, where that is safe. They may be they might have kids at home. They might have a spouse that's working from home. They might be in an area where there's DSL or cable is the only internet that's available, and when the kids are home gaming, they don't have a reliable video connection. Plus, they just don't feel like they're professionals. There really is something to be said about getting out of your house and putting on a clean shirt and going to work.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that both from business owners who have come to us and said, I can't work from home anymore, but as well as from larger companies who have been sending key employees over who they're afraid of losing because they're open. Their businesses or their headquarters where offices are open, but they've got key employees who don't want to go there. They're just not ready. For one reason or another, they don't feel safe. So they've been paying the freight, and they're sending them to work with us. But this has been the trend that's been, even before COVID. We've been seeing larger businesses recognizing that they don't have to show a long-term lease as a liability on their balance sheet when they can sign an agreement for less than 1 year and have it inexpensive, and it doesn't appear, and it's a way of keeping pushing your stock price up.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the getting dressed and kind of getting out of the house dynamic. I think at the beginning of this whole COVID thing, it was a novelty. Like, it was funny, right? Like, oh, I can, wear my boxer shorts and be on a Zoom call. And I think a lot of people, within the first couple of weeks, that started to wear really thin. And not to mention the fact that no matter how it's a luxury to be able to kind of like build out a home office, right? Like real estate, especially we're in North Jersey. It's some of the most expensive real estate in the entire country. It's a luxury to have a spare bedroom or a spare room to be able to build out into a home office, right? So that being said, I think that kind of dynamic, it was like fun to joke about in the beginning, but really what's funny is like, me personally, like I'll come in with just to dress up. Like sometimes I'll be doing a recording like this, or sometimes I'll have a Zoom chat with someone who's a client that I need to like still, kind of impress and look professional and everything like that. And Karen at the front will ask me if I have a job interview. and I always tell her, no, everyone thinks I'm too high maintenance. They won't give me a position anywhere.
You're the only one who'll give you a job.
Yes. Yeah. My boss. Don't ask Alan's opinion of his boss right now, because he's a little biased in terms of his opinion.
Well, listen. To be fair, I was the one that said, "Hey, when can I move into the office?" Because doing it from home, I was running into the same problem. Like, it was all fun and games, but then I started realizing certain things about myself. Like, yeah, I could work, or there's this movie I want to watch. I mean, I guess like. And I find myself, I say, I'm going to just go watch TV for an hour. And then I look up and it's 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I might as well just go to bed and call it a day.
Yeah. And I think from that dynamic, I think you've also done a really proactive job. This is a pat on your background. You've done a really proactive job. Most of the people within the office space are abiding by distancing. Everyone has their own separate space, which is fantastic, to begin with. Masks and things like that are all being adhered to. And on top of that, you brought in something that really impressed me is it hydrogen peroxide, like that kind of like fogger or misting system that you have?
Yeah, it's a halo machine. It's hydrogen peroxide with silver ions. That silver is supposed to be as a disinfectant, and you spray this fogger, and it disinfects whatever it lands on. It's used in surgical centers. Honestly, to be honest, I didn't buy it for Liberty Office Suites. We had it at our Learning Garden at our preschool next door, which is my wife's business. We bought that. We invested in it several years ago, to try to keep the flu and Coxsackie and all the other little things that are inherent in a preschool down. But when we found, when COVID hit, we said, why don't we use it at Liberty as well? And and being somewhat of a germaphobe myself, I like having it.
It was. I think all of us are kind of, we're dealing with it in different ways. Psychologically, most of all, we're all dealing with it in different ways. For me, it was just a show of good faith. Like, I had faith in the fact that this facility was being proactive. Not to mention the fact that the standard stuff that we talked about, up front, and what the hand sanitizer stations and stuff like that, and regular cleaning. But it was a show of good faith to say, like, you're not just kind of doing the bare minimum. That's the other issue that I have is, anyone who comes into any situation, they say, oh, well, this is the bare minimum, so this is all we're going to do. I'm always skeptical of that, right? Because it always makes it seem like the only reason why they're doing it is because that's what's established as the bare minimum. This was like that next step forward for me. I think that kind of sold me on how proactive you were with it. How has that dynamic been? Has it been forgive my language, but a pain in the ass to deal with COVID and kind of some of the restrictions, or has it just been something where you're like, you know what, I gotta hitch up my pants and take care of what I need to take care of in order to keep the facility operational?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter. We always tried to go a little bit beyond in terms of being clean. We have our own cleaning staff that we hire directly as opposed to a third party service. And so we get to direct the type of cleaning products that we want and how they should be used. And I know sometimes they go a little overboard, and we have to, the smell of the bleach can be a little overwhelming. But that's something I recognize that we're a lot better off than so many other businesses. We could we were open, and we wanted to do whatever we could to make sure that we stayed open. And the other thing is, of course, that many of our clients have real, genuine concerns that we need to address in order to, first of all, for them to consider us in the very first place, but for them to feel safe while they're here. They made the commitment to have their offices with us. And we want to make sure that they do feel safe and as secure as one can, in an environment like this. So it really wasn't that much of a stretch for us. We put those door handles in that you can in the restrooms where you can stick your arm through it and pull the door open instead of having to use your clean hands to pull the door handle with. And we did that even before COVID hit, because again I don't like germs. So it was just something that we did, and it's no real big deal. We want people to be comfortable and confident that they're in a safe, a reasonably safe environment as reasonably possible.
Definitely. That definitely harkens back to that hospitality aspect of things, right? Like you want people to feel comfortable. I think the other positive is this is a 24/7 facility, right? So I think that's the other dynamic that had been increasing over time, and maybe COVID has also accelerated that, right? Like it's I mean, a couple of months ago, before a couple of months before COVID, I had signed up for 24-hour fitness, and that was before gyms became taboo. That was a big selling point to me. It was like I have 3 kids. I work like a crazy person. Sometimes I go to the gym at 11 o'clock at night, right? The same thing can be said about office space. I mean, every so often, if you've ever looked at the swipes, you probably see me come in at odd hours. Allyn, you're coming in Sundays, right? Like to get some work done and kind of prospect and work that way. I mean, that's also a huge selling point of this. It's not a facility that's just a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 kind of facility. But yeah, I think that's a huge selling point. If you were an investor today, like take a step back, Ron, if you were an investor today and you had money to put into, say, like a standard commercial long-term lease type space versus a Liberty office suites, would you make the same investment again? I mean, is that something that you think is, just as powerful, if not more so, into the future under the present circumstances in terms of being able to deploy your investment dollars?
Yes, I would. It's a great question, but as somebody with my background is a commercial real estate broker and developer. Before I got into this, so people ask me, what is good about this as opposed to owning a building and renting it to businesses for 5 years. And I say to them, you have to change your mindset. This is something we spoke about earlier, is that you're not a landlord anymore. You are running a business, and you've got clients. They're not tenants. These are people you need to satisfy on a daily basis. But once you wrap your mind around that you're running a business as opposed to a passive investment, that you sign a lease with a client and they're there for 5 years or more, you have to. With the advantage of this is, our office, once we invested in building out the office spaces and furnishing them, we don't have to renovate. Sometimes if you sign a lease as a conventional landlord with a tenant, the tenant leaves in 3 to 5 years, and you've got to gut the space and then go find another tenant. So you have downtime. The space is vacant. You have to pay a real estate broker. You have to get building permits and go and build out the space again. Sometimes it's really hard to even break even in 5 years. The only way you can get home is if the tenant renews. So we don't have that kind of uncertainty, or if a client leaves, we repaint their offices and, freshen up the furniture, but that office remains the same office for the next client. So
what is that lifespan like? I mean, your typical client, are they staying about the same amount of time as if you were renting out the majority of the building to one client, or is there higher turnover?
That's a good question. There is higher turnover. Businesses do come and go. We've been very fortunate, however, that we have clients that have been in my Pine Brook location. We've been here, Montville is Pine Brook, 10 years. I've got some people who've been here from the very, very beginning, and they've grown with us. They're like family. But it's the nature of the business. The clients, their businesses, they rent an office. They do well. They might rent a second office or a third. But by the time they get beyond that, it might make sense to then go and rent in a lease space for 5 years in a conventional office building. From an economical point of view.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the selling point, right? Like, part of the selling point is the fact that you're not locked into this ridiculously long setup, and obviously you have to deal with the turnover aspect of it. Is there something different about the financials of an operation like this versus, say, a standard? I mean, it's pretty much, is your curve smoother? Right, because you mentioned, like, if you operate a big industrial commercial, or not industrial, big commercial location that you're reliant on larger clients to take up the majority of the square footage or big chunks of the square footage, like, it's good while it's occupied, but also those are good peaks, but the valleys also suck, right? Like, is your curve a little bit smoother than others?
It is. We don't have the length, the lag in between the time a client leaves, a tenant leaves, and then a new one comes in. Because in theory, I can get an office that has been vacated, painted overnight, and bring in fresh furniture if that's needed, and then move somebody in the next day. The internet is a given. The phones are a given. The conference rooms. The staff up front is all a given. It's there already. So there isn't a big lag in between someone leaving and someone new being able to come in.
Yeah. No, that's I appreciate that, because I think a lot of folks might look at it and they might say, like, my input cost on the front end is the same. What am I gaining by doing this versus some other deployment of their capital? But all things remaining equal, that kind of dependability of that revenue. But then again, I mean, you have to hustle for it. Like you said, you're not buying an apartment building that's like 80% occupied and just hiring someone to collect rent. I mean, you have to hustle in order to kind of fill that vacancy, right?
We do, and we recognize that that's another reason why we really try to do a good job of satisfying our clients. Because rather than relying on people coming in off the street, the best source of business is a satisfied client. For you, Matt, to say to somebody that through the course of your day-to-day business that may be looking for an office, to say, hey, I've got the place that I'm in, does a really good job, and I like being there, and I'd love to have you working in the building too. That's the greatest source of our success. It has been referrals, and we really like to we try to make it worth people's while, but we try to keep it at top of mind. Please think about us, and it works.
Well, that's also, if someone was looking at this, I would say that's also, I don't think this is necessarily something you're focused on, but some other folks that might get into the space might be focused on this. I see a lot of this in, like, New York City, right? Like who is it? Damon John, right, in New York City, who I forget what was he like one of the first ones on WeWork or something like that? I forget. He had like a co-working space or like this incubator thing that he was getting involved in, and he's still kind of running. But the idea was that it wasn't just trying to get whoever needed space in the room, right, or in the building. It was trying to get these collaborative businesses in the room. And so there's a lot of opportunity there for someone who can almost be like a broker of space, not just in terms of like one individual client's needs, but in terms of trying to get multiple clients that form almost like an ecosystem, right, to get into the location. Yeah, I think that's huge.
My friend Steve Fernari is an attorney. He runs a business called Law Firm Suites. He's got locations in New York and Florida, and he also consults with other owners that want to do the same thing. He rents only to attorneys, and he is very, very careful about the types of attorneys that he brings in.
Yeah,
so that he wants to have a complementary suite of attorneys that have different specializations, so that they refer business to one another. The value of being in one of his suites to an attorney far exceeds the space value. It comes from the referral business that comes from the other attorneys, as well as all the brain power that they have to go and pick somebody's brain down the hall when they've got something that comes up. And he's been very successful at making that work.
Yeah, that I could imagine. That's like, if you can't afford to in-house something, having someone that you can refer business to, like literally like right the next office, that's massive. I mean, talk about an efficiency argument for, kind of setting up that way. Allyn, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. Collaboratively, who should we go after to get into Ron's offices in order to get someone in here that we can do some good business with? I'm just kind of like racking my brain right now, thinking who we should get in here to kind of like round out the environment.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, we don't really need for what I do. It would be if we could squeeze some kind of architect, engineer, somebody who does who doesn't need a huge office to do what he does, but refers a lot of business out to construction companies and does a lot of consulting work for companies like that.
Loss control, right? Like a loss control rep or an OSHA consultant. That would be huge too.
Yeah,
we lost Ron. That's right.
Yeah,
we'll continue with Adam. We're going to sell his real estate for him. He'll be back on here pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean the space that we're in really does suit people who are doing something on a large scale without needing the space to do it on a large scale.
Yeah.
You don't really, you're not going to want a franchise, like a franchise owner trying to run a franchise out of an office like that. They need the space to have the files and the resources and things like that. So you need a guy who basically his whole company is run off of a laptop.
Yeah. Well, no, and that's funny that you say that, because that's pretty much how Treadstone worked, right? Myself and Giovanni, we started Treadstone essentially off of 2 laptops. Him working out at his home office and me basically working out of Starbucks so I can get away from my 3 kids who were, screaming in the background. But so that's a dynamic that's not just happening in the insurance broker space, and it's happening in a lot of other, white collar professions. And I think what people are also beginning to learn with the current environment is that they can do more with less. It's just they needed this situation to light a fire under their rear end to make the changes that they could have been making all along.
Well, yeah, you're hearing a lot out of the financial district and the financial institutions saying these corporate offices, they don't do anything there anymore. They have their people show up to essentially work a 9 to 5 and go home. They're not holding the big meetings anymore. They're not holding the giant mergers in person. Yep. You don't need to. I mean, The 3 of us sitting here right now could combine 3 companies and work out all the details staring at each other through a camera. That's what the big industry you're hearing it now. I'm sure it's going to go into various, retail will probably wind up going that way because you look at the Amazon and Walmarts and what they're doing. You're losing the brick and mortar and going internet. What do you need for internet? You need a guy that can sit in an office and update the website all day long.
Well, a perfect example is, Ron, you have like I don't even know what they are. They're a toy distributor. Are they a manufacturer or a distributor that works out of this location?
Yeah, they're actually a Japanese toy company that has their U.S. headquarters with us. And they from a warehouse.
That's like, what's the line from PCU? This is my closing argument. Like, that's the perfect embodiment of kind of maybe part of your vision, right, Ron? It's like, foreign company, U.S. domestic headquarters, but not necessarily needing tens of thousands of square feet. They're essentially using some small space and then, kind of distributing, creating a distribution model from that kind of small amount of resource, right?
It's a guy on a laptop answering emails all day.
Yeah.
They off-sited hired a logistics company to do their distribution that they had been doing themselves. And now they have their office staff. They only have 4 offices with us, but they keep them busy because not everybody comes into the office every day. They have a schedule. So the office is being used all the time, but not necessarily by the same people.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point too. Anyone who has transient office staff where, say, they have 20 employees, but they might only need 4 or 5 desks at a time. This is also a huge argument for them because, if assuming you can figure out how to schedule who's in and who's out, right? If you only need 4 or 5 desks at peak demand, then this is also a huge solution for them where, again, they don't necessarily have to invest in 10 offices and 5 or 6 of them sit idle or unused all of the time as well. So I think that's a huge selling point for that.
That's the same thing with flight attendants. They might be 30 people to a 2-bedroom apartment, but 30 people are never in that apartment at the same time.
I'm glad you went a practical direction with that conversation because I was worried when we started talking about flight attendants.
Well, hold on. I mean, I could go another direction. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to keep this somewhat PG, if not PG-13.
Oh man, honestly.
So no, I think those are all huge selling points, and those are all dynamics that are going to continue to play out over time because, as much as we want to get back to kind of like the status quo, some of us will get back to the status quo, and then a lot of us will adapt to the new market environment that exists.
It's called the new normal. I've seen it on TV.
Yeah. Well, buzz phrases aside, I think
believe me, I could hold an entire live on the stupidity of some of these cliches that have come out in the media and on TV in the past 8 months.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we try not to get too political on this show, but I would love to hear your opinion on this, Ron. I think the phrase "the new normal," okay, I think is just redundant speak for, things are changing, but they've always been changing, right?
Yeah, there's no constant change.
Yeah.
We have always, this industry, the service office industry, has always been there in order to accommodate changing business needs. Almost by definition, it is a flexible use of space for those who need to have space but don't want to make a long-term commitment to it. So our dynamic hasn't really changed all that much. I think our clients' needs have changed, and that's really what's been different. It's no longer just the people who are moving out of the spare office and trying to test the waters. Now it's really a recognized type of solution for all sorts of companies, up to the Fortune 50.
Yeah. Now, what was your take on WeWork, right? Like they got, so they were kind of like the I guess the poster child for this kind of model. But then again, obviously there was all kinds of drama and stuff that came along with specifically the CEO of WeWork. But they almost got too big too fast, right? Like they tried to monopolize this industry pretty quickly after they IPO'd. And I think they just kind of like, this is no different than any other kind of real estate industry when it comes to, you have to build methodically, right? Like, I don't think anyone is going to conquer the shared or on-demand office space industry overnight. Is that kind of your take as well?
It is. It is. I think WeWork is really a phenomenon. I think there was a whole lot more sizzle than there ever was steak to them. And I'm not saying anything that nobody else has noticed. They forgot the most important thing about running a business, which is to be profitable. They have wonderful business communities, but if you're not making money at the end of the day, you can't last for very long.
Yeah.
And that's what enables us as a profitable business to continue to provide better service to our clients, and keep the doors open and the lights on and the office is sanitized. Is that we run a business. It's a business. It's not we're not doing it for charity. But that's one thing that I think about WeWork. And the other thing was also in the urban settings. There was I think a time when people thought it was really great to work in a wide open collaborative environment where everybody's sitting on sofas or in a large table next to one another, whether you work for the same company or not. And those of us at centers like ours, that with lots of private offices and not an awful lot of communal area, thought, oh, gee, we're dinosaurs. We're never going to be able to survive. And then, WeWork kind of petered out, and COVID came around, and now everybody wants a private office. So, look how smart we turned out by being really dumb.
Yeah. Luck favors the prepared, Ron. But I think, Allyn and I maybe should do like a standalone episode on this in the future, but just the overall phenomenon of not just WeWork, but kind of like these co-working spaces in general, and also office design, right? Like when it came to shared office and open office floor plans and things like that. There was a couple of these studies that came out that made a lot of these companies go all the way in one direction to fully open office space. And then you saw the pendulum begin to swing back. Even before COVID, it was swinging back because there were now all of a sudden all these test cases where we could talk about whether people actually were more collaborative, whether it did build more kind of like bonds between coworkers and things like that. And they came to find out that in certain situations, yes, there were advantages to the open office concept. And then in other situations, it actually was detrimental to the point where people were not opening up, or they wouldn't make phone calls, or they would kind of regress a little bit because they didn't want everyone to know their dirty laundry, right? Like they didn't have an office that they could duck into in order to fight with their wife on the phone. Not that I would do that, but so that was kind of that dynamic where the pendulum was already kind of like coming back in the other direction.
I'm curious how that's going to follow in the real estate market. All these, open floor plan. You've now spent 9 months having to stare at your family, who's probably been driving you insane. Your next house, look, it's a beautiful open concept. If I don't see a wall, and if I can look at my husband one more time.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because was actually
says that to you all every night.
Yeah, no. She's happy that I spend as much time at Ron's facility as I can. But there was actually, I forget if there was an article that I read or if it was a research paper, but it was talking about the dynamic of open floor plans in homes as well, like you said, and how the COVID is essentially causing people to either regret or rethink the overall concept of the open floor plan in homes, right? Because if everything is open with the exception of 1 or 2 bedrooms and you don't have a spare bedroom, where do you put your office, right? Like you need almost like a separate or at least a partitioned area in order to have some, some sanity in terms of being able to get work done. But yeah, no, I think that's a huge point there. So no, I want to thank you, Ron. I appreciate you coming on, and I know you're just from having shared office space with you in the cube right next to where you're recording from right now. I know how busy a person you are, so I appreciate the time. If anyone wants to find out more about Liberty Office Suites, where can they go?
Just libertyofficesuites.com is our website. You'll see a couple of virtual tours where you could see either of our locations. Or just give us a call. We love to talk with people.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. It's a pleasure to work with. Learned a lot from being around you, we appreciate the opportunity.
I'm not going to let Allyn respond to that. He'll undermine my credibility.
He notice how he moved you in an office as far away from his cubicle as possible.
Yeah. There might be some conscious decision making going on there.
He learned everything he needed to know, and it was time to move you away.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, Allyn. As always, it was a good time. Again, anyone, if you've made it to the end of this recording or this live, please make sure to subscribe, share, comment, hit the notification bell so that you know the next time we go live. And we come at you every single Monday night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Build Your Bottom Line, sponsored by Treadstone Risk Management. Allyn, Ron, have a good evening. Yes. And we'll come at you again next week. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.